Over the next year or so, we'll be transitioning from a roofing company to a training enterprise for roofers. And we'll begin a series where we'll explore the world through the eyes of a roofer. And the concept that we'll explore here is the concept about transitions. Now, roofing is really simple if you can continue doing what you're comfortable with and what you've been trained to do. And the complexities arise when something different shows up. Now you start laying a roof and the slope changes dramatically, or when the roof meets a different type of material, or the roof suddenly now has a penetration that you've got to flash around and make waterproof, or when you're on the middle of the roof and then you've got to go near the edge. Now, those of you who drive, and that's most of us, know that if we had our own dedicated lane, the chances of getting to our destination with no hiccups is pretty good. And the complexity arises when you have to change lanes to get to where you want to go. And in the process of changing lanes, in the transition, is where everything can happen. So there's a lot of things that need to be done in the transition. You need to look, you need to indicate, and you may have to slow down, speed up. So a lot of things happen in the transition. And if you don't get it right, chances are that you may be late at your destination. And on the subject of driving, those of us who drive a manual transmission, and some call it a stick shift, know how important the transition is, because you need to know exactly when to transition from one gear to another, and also how you actually do that. Now, did you know that rowers put more training in the transition rather than in the power stroke? Now, the transition is when the oars are physically out of the water. And there are a lot of subtle things that the rower needs to do in that transition when the oars are physically out of the water. In the timing and in the rotation, a lot of other things. So that when the oars eventually get back and hit the water, it's positioned and timed perfectly so that you can get the most power out of your stroke. And a lot of roofing failures happen at the transition. And the most common one that we come across is the transition from a metal roof to a tile roof. Because not only is there a change in the slope, there is a change in the materials. There's two different materials coming together. There is a change in the roofing trades. You have a metal roofer and you have a roof tiler. So the question when there's a transition on a roof is, who goes first? And if you follow the first principles of roofing, we know that you always start downstream and then work yourself upstream. So therefore, the metal roofer starts first and then the tile roofer. Now, if you do it the other way, you start to run into a lot of problems, especially if the tile roof has got a valley in it that terminates onto the metal roof, or it's got a hip that is built adjacent to the metal roof. The trick in the transition is that the metal roofer always goes before the tile roofer. Now, that's not all, because the metal roofer has now some challenges. He has to design his roof to be able to be transitioned back onto a tile roof. So a few things that has to be kept in mind. One, the roof sheets. The upstream end has to be prepared properly, because there's a lot of water coming off the tile roof and it flows onto the metal roof, and you have to consider that. Because normally, if there's only a metal roof, you only get the water that falls on the roof. You don't get any additional water from any other roof. In this case, at the transition, you're building your roof, but you've got to consider the fact that the metal roof is going to put a lot of water right on the edge of your metal roof, and you need to prepare it correctly. Otherwise, there'll be a leak on the transition. So you've got to consider the design of the flashing between the metal roof and the tile roof, called the tile flashing, and a lot of people call it the transition flashing. So a lot is going to be done, and this is where the action happens, at the transition. Any error here and the performance of the roof suffers. Now, every roofer out there would have gone through their own transitions in their career. You started as an apprentice, perhaps, and then you transitioned into a tradesman after you've got the skills and you've had some practice. And some stay as just tradesmen in the roofing game, but some would like to progress a bit further, and they go, why don't I become an independent contractor? And they transition from just a tradesman in a job to their own independent business, a sole trader, and they become a contractor. So there's a transition, and those of you who have done that would know that it can be quite a steep transition. There are a lot of things that you don't know as a tradesman that you have to learn to become your own boss. So that can be quite a steep transition. And once you've achieved the status of a successful sole trader, then you may have the ambition to have your own roofing business. You may think that transitioning from working for yourself to having other people work for you, and you become a boss of a roofing business, not that hard, right? But those of you who have taken that transition know how hard it is, because it's almost going one step forward, maybe one or two steps backwards. And eventually, most of you go, why bother? But for those who have endured the journey and they have stuck to it, there are a lot of joys by being the owner of a roofing business. And you start small, put in a few workers, and you gradually get to a size where it becomes difficult to scale. And you go, should I get bigger? Should I stay the same? Or should I just give up? So there's a big question there, and very few of you would have transitioned from the owner of a roofing business to being the CEO of a roofing enterprise. That is something a lot bigger than just a roofing business. And that is the ultimate transition for a roofer. All the way from being an apprentice, working your way up to a tradesman, then owning your own business, and then having a business that employs other roofers, and ultimately to a roofing enterprise that has a lot of other roofing companies as your partner. That is the ultimate transition. And very little of us get to that position. And if you were to take a quiet moment to consider the transitions in your life, you'll notice that there have been quite a lot of transitions. A few of them done well, but most of them done without the proper guidance. And what's the result? Usually in some sort of failure. Transitions. We've just looked at how important they are in roofing and in the other parts of your life also. So if you find this segment of value to you, we've got more like this in production in our studio, and you can always come back for more. Meanwhile, take some time out to consider the transitions that's happened in your life and how you've managed them. Could you have done better with the right guidance? So, as a roofer, Are you up to transitions? Which transition have you done already, and which ones are you going to put your hand up?